What's up, guys, and welcome to Crime Commentary Part 2. This is episode 2, part 2 of Samuel Little. Got my blunt rolled and I'm smoking and having a coffee as we dig into his Florida victims. So we're going to talk about his Florida victims today, and we're going to get into Imogene Dorsey, which was Samuel Little's his girlfriend at the time, and kind of see what happened with her, who she was, how she died, things like that. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and smash that bell so you know when I'm pumping out more videos. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with me, and let's get started. So we have a lot of information to cover in this episode of Crime Commentary Part 2, or Episode 2, Samuel Little, Part 2. These are his Florida victims. So let's just get straight to it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Smash that bell so that you know when I'm pumping out new videos. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning in with me for another week of crime commentary. So I know last week we mentioned that, I mentioned that Samuel Little had a girlfriend named Jean, and she seemed to travel a lot with him to the various different states that he did commit murders in. And so I was always pretty, intrigued. Not really intrigued, but I guess the word would be intrigued to see where, she fit into the picture, if she had anything to do with the murders, and kind of just a little bit more backstory about her. I always find it pretty odd when men go out and murder women and make it a normal thing and have a girlfriend. I know Ted Bundy had a girlfriend, and I thought that was weird too. And there were some sketchy little things that were brought up in his stories and his documentaries about her daughter. And so it made me wonder if, her name is Imogene Dorsey, if she knew whether or not he was a murderer or not. So I did a little bit of some research on her, and I was able to gather some things about her. And so I like to just kind of take a moment to focus on Jean. And basically, I've always kind of wondered, was she compliant? How did she not know that she was with a freaking psychopath? And so, yeah, that's kind of what led me to her. So it says, Little met Imogene Dorsey while he was in jail. The two spoke between a crack in the cells where Dorsey warned him that another woman he was dating was going to snitch on him pretty much. And according to Dorsey, his then girlfriend was looking to turn on him and rat him out to the police. And soon Little ditched the other woman to spend more time with Jean. So basically, she's in a cell with him. She, when you're in a cell, you're a woman. You're most times, more than likely, you're housed with other women, if not always. And so if you're in population, and I'm only telling y'all this because I was arrested one time, and yeah, thank God I've never been back to jail. It wasn't a fun experience. But, and I was drunk too, so be careful when y'all are out there drinking that you don't wake up in jail the next day. Anywho, you're housed with general population at first. Once you are booked, however, you go into housing with nothing but the same sex as you. And so if she's in there with the, females, and she's in there with Little's current girlfriend at the time, then she overheard her kind of snitching or planning on snitching and giving him up. And so she decided to go ahead and tell Little, which I found to be kind of that's pretty funny. It's like, girl, I'm going to take your man because I'm going to tell him that you a snitch, but I mean, hey, she got Little in the end. He ended up giving her more time, and he was interested in her. So it says that in late 1971, Little met Imogene Dorsey, and that was his first time meeting her. It was May 28th that year in Cleveland, and Stewart was arrested early in the morning, along with his then girlfriend. So the then girlfriend's name was Lucy Madero. And basically they were arrested for a robbery at the gas station. I guess it was called the Clark gas station in Westlake. And so, like we stated, while he was in prison waiting for his sentence, he basically was told that he was going to be snitched on by Lucy. And so, that Lucy was going to snitch on him. And so I found it ironic that he was also charged with sodomy and aggravated assault in that particular arrest. And that's pretty scary that you go to rob a gas station and get charged with sodomy and aggravated assault. And if anybody knows what sodomy is, which I think most of us do, I would hope that you're an adult listening to this. If you're not 18 or older, I want you to click out of this video and go find something else that's more kid appropriate. Anywho, that is just the most dastardly thing ever. I mean, rape, period, any form of being a wrong person is wrong. But when I think of that in particular, it's that is just a very aggressive crime. And it's just really disgusting. So by December, his case had made headlines, but his girlfriend Lucy was forgotten by the police, the courts, and the prosecutor. So they pretty much acted like she didn't even exist. And it was as if she had left her own doings in the jail just off of Payne Avenue for almost 6 months. So it was like she never existed. That is where she told her cellmate, O'Reilly Jean, that she planned on testifying against Little in court. And soon after, Jean found Little in an old jail and warned him about her plans. And basically, Jean was right in the end. And when the case did go to trial in March of 1972, Lucy testified against Little. But thanks to the tip, he and his defense team were prepared and they were able to handle what she testified against him about. In the end, records show that the jury found him not guilty. We should mention that because he was in jail, it was basically, the inmates could talk through holes in the wall and ceilings. And so basically, him and Jean communicating is pretty much where the initial contact came from, and it's where their relationship was able to blossom from. So when we talk about, like, where did she come from and how did they meet, pretty much he met Jean because another woman was going to snitch on him, and she pretty much told on her. So what I think that basically I was able to gather as to why Little never harmed Jean and why he cared for her, it was because it was basically because she showed him loyalty. And when she did that in the jail and she, told him what was going on, that's something that stuck with him the most over the years. And he mentioned that in one of his interviews, that because she was loyal, that stuck with him. And so the fact that Jean was actually 30 years older, than him, and as you can see in the picture, she looks a lot older than him at the time in that picture that we're looking at right now. And he described that he didn't see her as someone who was beautiful. He actually said she had no beauty, but he also complimented, like, her work, and he appreciated the things that she was able to teach him. Seeing that she was 30 years older than him, there's no telling what she was able to do. And I think maybe Little seen her as like a mother figure and nurturing, and was the opposite of what he actually had growing up. We know his mom was a prostitute. We know he came from a really broken upbringing, and that he's been involved in crime for a very long time. So maybe this is the first time that Little felt like he had a home, or like, there was love, because they say home is where the heart is. And if he loved her and he cared about her and he's seen her in a nurturing way, then maybe that's where Little, that was home for him. That's where he felt most comfortable. So it basically says that when she got out of jail, the pair traveled state to state, and they would hoard, and they would also sell stolen goods. And it was one of her skills and arts that she trained him in. And basically, this is how they were able to be wanderers, because this is how she was able to get around. And the couple was inseparable. And it basically says that they lived a life full of shoplifting, crime, and it happened for about the next 15 years until Jean passed away. And they became something like a regular Bonnie and Clyde type couple. Like, it just basically describes that they hit the road, stealing things for money and staying in rundown motels across the country. And so per the Cleveland magazine, Little later called Dorsey no beauty. And so we talked about that earlier. And just basically he didn't really see any beauty in her, but he did admit that she was almost like a surrogate mother. So what I was assuming was correct. His own mother and grandmother died shortly after they met in 1972 and 73 respectively. And it was the fact that she was loyal to him, and she didn't have to turn her back. Like, she didn't have to tell him about the girlfriend snitching. She didn't even have to talk to him, but she did. And so that's what kind of hooked Little. And basically he said, she even taught me how to fence or sell the things that we stole to keep afloat. And so I think that's really where Little probably found his love for her. And that's kind of where that loyalty lied with him. He's seen her as like a mother figure, and for a lot of people who don't have a mother, that's a big deal to someone. And it says, according to the outlet, it didn't seem like Dorsey knew that Little was going out at night to find his victims. And I did ask that earlier. Last video, I was like, I wonder, did she know? I wonder, was she complicit? And so basically she wasn't complicit. And I'm pretty sure she was. She would have been charged just like Little. Seeing that he was able to evade the police for so long, however, and she died in 1988, she probably wouldn't have been charged if she did have something to do with it, because she was long gone before Little was ever caught. So based off what they could gather, no, she was not complicit. And it says that she had no idea that he was strangling and murdered. though she had known he was up to no good, given that he was arrested dozens of times in every state. And this was information that was gained per the Washington Post. Both before and during their time together, she knew that something was off because he had so many arrest records and the charges were very enlightening to her. But she still stayed. So his charges would range from shoplifting, assault, to rape, and kidnapping. Their bond was strong enough that it protected her, at least, though. And it kind of kept him from doing anything to her. So I find that fascinating as well, that he tended to kill African-American women and then he allowed her to live and was super nurturing to her. So it does prove that, yeah, you're a freaking psychopath, because you knew the difference between good and bad, and you knew the difference between someone that you loved and someone that you just didn't care about. And like I mentioned in the last commentary, a lot of serial killers don't see prostitutes or drug addicts as someone they don't deem them as someone that is society-wise. They don't deem them as people that are worth it. And it's really sad, because they're still humans. They're still someone with a family. They're someone's mother, sister, auntie, cousin. They still deserve to be here. And I just feel like no one has the right to play God, essentially, and decide whose life ends. That's crazy. So back to, the information about Jean Dorsey. Basically, their bond, stayed strong. She ended up dying in 1988 of a brain hemorrhage in Los Angeles, and this is where they were living at the time. Little carried on his life of crime for another couple decades before being caught. But sadly, just like much of Little's victims, not much else is known about Imogene Dorsey or Riley Jean Dorsey. And when looking into Imogene and how she died, I found it interesting that it states she died from natural causes. And it put a great deal of emphasis on Jean not dying at the hands of anything else other than natural causes. But they also stated the same thing for many of Little's victims, which I found to be extremely interesting. So, even though they're saying that she died from brain hemorrhage, it could have very well been foul play. And because Little was able to elude the police for so long, and a lot of the police deemed a lot of his murder victims as accidental or drug overdose or stuff like that, it could have very well been mislabeled how, Jean died. He could have killed her, and that we will kind of never know. Although they do put a great deal of emphasis on her dying naturally, we just don't know. So basically, as a couple, they stayed together. They developed a perfect routine. Day after day, they moved around. They spent a lot of nights in seedy motels or cheap apartments. They sold their stolen goods. They conned individuals. They did a lot of things. So it says that night, they say Stewart because Samuel Stewart or Samuel Little, I don't know why they're calling him Stewart. In some of these transcripts, they refer to him as Stewart, and maybe that is his maiden name. I have to go back and look. But he put Jean to bed, and he went out into the dark to commit his own heinous crimes of murder. And so basically from his confessions, it seems as if Jean was never involved with that. And in 1988, when Little was right in his prime, she died, in Los Angeles. And it basically says, this is in quotation, her boyfriend did not kill her, and neither did she die from drug abuse. Her death was as natural as possible. So they put a great deal of emphasis on her dying naturally. So yeah, we'll never really know. Just like a lot of these victims, we'll never really know what actually happened. Anywho, that is the information that we have on O'Reilly Jean Dorsey. And now we're going to get into Samuel Little's Florida victims, which is what mostly these podcasts are about, are focusing on his victims. However, I feel like Jean, in a way, she was tricked by him too. She had no idea, and I don't think any sane person would stay with a serial killer. So I wanted to focus on her too, because there's not a lot of information about her. So let's dig into the Florida victims, and let's get started with our first victim, which goes by the name of Marianne. So the next victim that we're going to be talking about, her name is Marianne. And this happened in Miami, Florida. Technically, this victim is identified as a black male, but at the time was known to be somewhat of a cross-dresser. In today's times, she would be considered to be a transgender woman. So that's just what, it is. At the end of the day, it classifies her to be a male, but she's a woman. Her name is Marianne. It says that while Little was in Miami, Florida, he met a good-looking, approximately 18 to 19-year-old, 5'6" to 5'7" tall, 135 to 140-pound black male. Little stated the male presented himself as a woman and dressed as a drag queen, known to Little as Marianne. Little first met Marianne at a bar called Pool Palace, and it was near 17th Avenue. The black male told Little he had an ex-boyfriend named Wes. A few days later, they met again at a bar in Overtown, and Little remembered that Marianne liked to drink rum 51, where Little offered to give her a ride home. He stated that Marianne lived between several other drag queens, so she lived in the same area in the projects between Brown Sub, Brownsville, and Liberty City. He goes on to state that when they arrived there, one of the roommates asked them to buy a can of Magic Shave shaving cream, so they returned to Little's car, which was a gold 4-door Pontiac. And I wanted to mention, that's why I highlighted him having a gold 4-door Pontiac, that Little seemed to switch his cars up frequently, which also could have been why he was able to evade the police for so long. It said that he drove Marianne north on Highway 27, and he pulled into a driveway and choked her to death in his car. He then drove further down Highway 27 into the Everglades and turned down a dirt road that led to a river or a swamp. He dragged Marianne's body approximately 200 yards into the thick, muddy water, and he does not believe the body was ever found. So in Little's follow-up interview about Marianne, he stated that Marianne hung out with a male transvestite with an extremely long neck, and that he knew this person from the county jail. This individual knew Marianne and was one of the transvestites in the apartment that sent him to go get the Magic Shave that night. Little had seen the same individual with Marianne in a bar on 2nd Avenue, and he stated that Marianne hung out at an apartment that the transvestite lived at. In another follow-up interview, Little stated that he drove Marianne home to the projects in Brown Sub near Liberty City. He walked Marianne to an upstairs apartment with 3 transvestites or transgenders in it, and Little stated a tall transvestite with a long hooked nose lived in the apartment. He also stated that a tall black one that looked like a hawk asked him, and I guess he was known as Billy, to go with Marianne and buy the Magic Shave. So these were just some of the things that he followed up on in regards to Marianne in particular. I do not mean to offend anybody by the word and, words that I'm using. These are literal words verbatimly given from Little in his interviews that he spoke about this gentleman. So it's not, anything personal. It's really me just, giving the transcript exactly the way it's supposed to be given. So the next one of Little's victims comes from Miami, Florida. It's a black female. She is described as dark-skinned Haitian woman. Little stated that while in Miami, Florida in 1971 or 1972, or it could have possibly been around 1978 or 79, that he dated an ugly, dark-skinned Haitian woman. He described the woman as approximately 26 to 28 years old, and she stood between 5'4" and 5'8" tall, and she weighed about 120 to 30 pounds. He described the black female's hair as being in a knot-like hairstyle, plaited up, short, kind of braided, and straight stiff. He also stated he either picked the woman up in Homestead, walking the street, or at a bar in Homestead. And he stated that either the bar was off of the highway and it had a liquor part and a bar part, or he just, met her walking. He said that Little further indicated he thought the bar was one of the avenues in Homestead, so off of one of the avenues. He also described the woman as a big mouth, rough talking little black skinny girl, and not feminine, but just a hardworking woman. And these are all in quotations, so it's him speaking what he felt about her himself. He also described the female as tough, and he also stated that the woman worked as a civilian employee, possibly a janitor, or a janitor at Homestead Air Force Base, and he believed that she was also a prostitute at the same time. He took the black female to the woods on the military property, and then he took the black female a short distance from the road, approximately about 1/2 mile from the bar, and he thought the road was dirt and on an Air Force property. So it's not confirmed whether or not it actually was or wasn't. After killing the woman, he believed that he left the black female's body either on base property in some weeds, approximately 1 block from the main road, or in a field near the base outside of Miami. He stated he possibly left the black female in the woods, in quotation. He did not think water was too far from where he left the black female's body, but he wasn't for sure. He also believed that someone would have found the woman's body where he located her at. The next victim on the list, he titled his Fine Little Pretty Yellow Girl, and she was located in Miami, Florida, and she was a black female. Little stated that he killed a black female in Miami, Florida in the early to mid 1970s. He described the woman as a fine little pretty yellow girl who was approximately 23 to 24 years old. She stood about 5 foot 6 inches tall and she weighed about 130 pounds. Little stated the woman was a prostitute who had big legs and wore a skirt and red high heels. Little met the woman at a bar named the Pool Palace, and this is the second time that he met a victim there, off 17th Avenue in Miami, Florida. Little saw the black female's University of Miami student identification card and believed her name was Emily or something like that. He described the area as a dirt road in the Everglades with trash on both sides. He stated that there was trash, blankets, and mattresses laying around along the road. He also stated that they started arguing and wrestling, both him and the woman hit him in his mouth. He stated he snapped and he hit her a couple times before strangling her to death. Little dragged the black female out of his vehicle and onto a trash pile and put a mattress over her body. Little then threw the woman's purse and wallet into a nearby field with tall elephant grass in it. Little stated a white man observed him discard the black female's belongings and he never heard of her body being found again. So Little never heard of her being found. He never knew if she was discovered. So yeah, one of the similarities here is that he frequented this same place. He picked a victim from there, that same exact place. And I don't know if it was the dark-skinned Haitian girl or Marianne, but one of them he also found from Pool Palace. So he liked to frequent the same spots, and he liked to pick up victims from some of the same spots as well. So I feel like in Florida, his ammo was just a little bit different. Like in LA, he liked to frequent Tam's Burger, and there was a couple of other places that he frequented to pick up victims. And so I feel like it was no different in this case either. So the next victim stems from Fort Myers, Florida. She's a black female. Little stated in the summertime of approximately 1984 or possibly 90 or 91 that he killed a black female in Fort Myers, Florida. He described the woman as being 26 to 28, standing 5 foot 6 to 5 foot 7 tall, and anywhere between 130 to 160 pounds. So he described the female as being dark brown skin, having a nice body, and that he originally met his victim 2 years prior. So basically, he stated that him and Jean, which was Little's longtime girlfriend, used to go to the victim's family's house, which was in a black neighborhood, and he said that it was behind or possibly on Nelson Street, and they would sell clothes to them that they would steal. So Little believed the woman he killed was the daughter of the woman he and Jean used to sell clothes to. And the woman lived with her mother and possibly other family members down the street from a liquor store. Little stated that he and Jean were staying at a hotel downtown when they sold the clothes to the woman's family. On the day that he killed the woman, he said he saw the black female outside of the liquor store on Nelson Street, and she had shorts on and she was nice looking, and he basically said she was clean and nice looking. He also stated the black female was mad about her husband or somebody, and that the woman got in the car and he drove her to the island in the road, which was a wooded tract of land near some railroad tracks by a little section of cleared grass. He strangled the black female to death, and then he left her body in the short grass with the woods right next to it. Little stated that he left the woman in a grass aisle outside the city. It wasn't that far outside the city, though. The railroad tracks train ran by there. Little stated, I think I got back on what was the highway or whatever that runs from Naples all the way up to Tampa or Fort Myers, that main highway. I think I might have been 75. I think it might have been 75. Little thought the black female lived at a house and Jean used to basically sell clothes at. And Little stated the family lived in a house behind Nelson Street. So some of this stuff is repetitive in these transcripts, and I don't understand why they would repetitively list things. So the transcript info further details what Little said in quotation. And it says he stated that the woman got into a vehicle and he took off and found the first grassy area that he could find. And basically, he had anal sex with the woman and then manually strangled her to death. He stated the woman was right there in that mother vine, in that island there, little clear, where that grass was nice and short and the woods was right next to it. I left her right there, and I'd be careful not to run over her. I just backed out real carefully and left her right there. That was in Fort Myers, Florida, in the county somewhere. Little stated it was not far from Fort Myers. And he said right there, just out in the suburbs, it wasn't that far. And I'm trying to mock Little because, of course, he lived in LA, he lived in Texas. So I'm just imagining, based off the interviews I've seen of him talking, what he would have sounded like answering them. So in a follow-up interview, Little stated that he lit the black female's pubic hair on fire. And that was something that was not in the transcripts, but it's something that he mentioned later on when discussing the woman with the police. And I found that to be, it was already a heinous crime. It was already pretty scary. But for him to have lit her pubic hairs on fire, he was definitely crazy. Victim Little described to be a chubby black female. This happened in Tampa Bay or Clearwater, Florida. And of course, she's a black female. So he said in approximately 1977 or 78, and he said in quotations it could possibly be between 1983 and 84, Little met an approximately 23-year-old girl who was 5 foot 5 inches tall and between 140 to 160 pounds. He described her as a short, chubby black female in a bar in Clearwater on St. Petersburg in Florida. And not on St. Petersburg. I ain't from Florida, so my bad to all the, you Florida people. I was not trying to butcher y'all's city, but I guess Petersburg is a city in Florida. So he said he was either in St. Petersburg or in Clearwater, not on Petersburg Street. Little was driving a black Thunderbird at the time, and he stated that the woman had a dark complexion. He described her skin as leather colored and was dancing in a bar when he met her. Little stated the black female was wearing some sexy shorts, but wanted to go home and change. He drove to the woman's residence in a black neighborhood somewhere so she could change her clothes. When Little arrived at the woman's residence, the black female took her shorts off and put on a black skirt. He stated about 5 of her siblings, sisters, brothers, came running out, yelling her name. Sam, Sam. The black female entered Little's vehicle, and he told the woman he was going to Lakeland. Little drove the woman to a beach where he got his vehicle stuck in a barbed wire fence and sand. Little stated several white boys who were drinking beer helped get him out of the sand, and he drove the woman to a grassy wooded area not far from the beach with the railroad tracks nearby and possibly outside of Tampa, headed to Plant City. He stated that when driving, he first saw buildings and then he saw vegetation, and Little drove the woman to an island of grass round with a curb around it. He stated that he found this grassy lane, some grassy woods, and back over there, we parked. I know there was a railroad track that run across this one because I'm looking right at the train go by. The man up in the window, the engineer, sitting up. There go, woo, woo, woo. I waved when he went. Little stated he dumped the woman right there on the spot by a railroad track outside of Tampa, headed towards Plant City. He stated the woman was wearing that bad, tight miniskirt and a blouse and left her drawers in the car. I started to keep them drawers for a trophy. Little strangled the woman and then left her body near the railroad tracks on the grass out in the open. He believed this area was in the city limits of Tampa and possibly within a mile of downtown. He stated that after he killed the woman, I backed up and hit the highway. He said that he drove through Plant City and arrived in Lakeland. Little stated when he discarded the black female, she had a skirt on, but it was way up over her waist. I think she still had her blouse on. Think she was fully clothed, but I might have had her drawers off. In a follow-up interview, Little stated he dragged the woman by her arms, and he believed that the woman was left lying on her back with her arms over her head. Upon getting any additional details, they stated that Little stated he left the Tampa victim in a grove in a railroad track And Little stated he left the woman in the city limits of Tampa, possibly within a mile of downtown, which is something we already talked about. He stated he drove 1 to 3 miles from the beach to a wooded area in Tampa, and he stated that there were railroad tracks near the wooded area. He also stated that he could hear the train from the location that he discarded the woman's body. So that concludes all that we know about his Florida victims. Some of my thoughts on this case were, for one, his way of thinking. Little was able to evade the police for a very long time. So I was very intrigued by his way of thinking, because I wondered, like, did he do something different that made him, less detectable by the police? And I really feel like upon doing more research, it seemed like Little was just like every other criminal. He just was fortunate enough to not have gotten caught for so long. It's not like he did anything special. He was pretty dumb. He frequented the same places and picked up his victim from some of the same places, which in my personal opinion, based off watching so many crime shows, that's like the dumbest thing that you can do, because it's a pattern. And every killer has a pattern. And so for Little, he had a lot of patterns of frequenting the same places, picking up people that may have seen him before and not really giving two hells about whether or not he was identified by a witness or anything. There's plenty of stories where someone could have identified him. Now, some of the things that made him a little smarter was that he did switch up his cars often, and he traveled a lot state to state. So it seems like once he kind of once the heat was on and bodies were getting found, he seemed to move on to his next destination pretty quickly. And so I would say that was, that's probably why he was able to evade the police as well. I also think that he took his time in terms of making sure that he didn't commit the murders or dump the bodies, for the most part, in any areas that were, easily accessible. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. Most times he does describe that he took them to like a secluded grassy area, which for me, that probably was another reason why it took him so long to be caught. I do think he had of course, when I say this next statement, it's a no-brainer, but he definitely had a lack of compassion. The fact that he killed that one lady, and he literally stated that her and her mom bought clothes from him and Jean, that was crazy to me. Also, the fact that, like, how he was with Jean, it shows that he had some level of humanness. Like, the fact that he literally took his time to, like, get to know this lady that's 30 years older than him, love her. That doesn't, mean nothing in my book, because when you look at a sociopath or a psychopath, it's like, normally they don't have that level. They can't reach that level of understanding with any other person, and that's what sets them apart from a lot of people. Some of them can, but it's very superficial. And to me, from what I was able to gather, it seemed like Jean and Little was actually, they were very close. Something else I wanted to talk about was basically Jean. We talked about her at the beginning, and I feel like Little, like I said, he really cared about her because he took the time out. He didn't harm her. He cared for her. He learned from her. He's seen her as a nurturing mother figure. And so that kind of goes back to Little's childhood and, the child trauma that he seemed to kind of never grow out of. Basically, we're going to, in the next segment, which is going to be the third and final part of this series, we're going to be looking at his victims in Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Nevada, Ohio, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And that video will kind of touch bases on those victims in those states that were mentioned. I'm compiling this video together because many of the victims in those states were like, there was only like one victim here, one victim there. So in those murders, those victims seemed to be kind of spread out. He did kill about 3 in Georgia and 2 in Louisiana, but of the states that were just listed, he probably only killed 1 victim in each state. So that video can be compiled together. He did his most killings in Los Angeles, and then the second most would have been in Florida. So from what has been able to be connected and tied together with Little. So stay tuned for that next week, and thank you guys again. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another crime commentary podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and smash that bell so you know when I'm pumping out more videos. I truly appreciate you guys, and we're up to 103 subscribers.